I have mentioned on many previous real-side experiences that revealed are the multitudes of species and body forms throughout multi-dimensional creation, electing at this moment to step up and decide to embark on the process of becoming more aware, and ultimately a process that taken to its conclusion so is recognition is attained. That regardless of the choices we have made, the consciousness we have constructed, of how abrasive and destructive of others we may have been, all this is simply our idea-effecting simulation creations. That although we always experience in reflective equal measure that which we are, our consciousness design and inclination, we always are the effects of ourselves in regards to body form and creational position and circumstance. In reality, these ideas serve only as comparisons that the ears can be recognized. The unreal, fabricated, isolated idea effecting parts and pieces in comparative relation to the isness, the true reality wholeness that incorporates everything. And indeed, among those stepping up at this time are various body forms that had been previously operating in destructive capacities, including some of the most notorious species, such as the reptilians. Their consciousness of a design that their overall inclination is that of domination, subjugation, and control, and yet even the reptilians are recognizing the prudence of extraction from a simulator that is nearing its end. A simulator that may very shortly become as a darkness, and where the ability to create no longer is available. For in actuality, regardless of the body form, regardless of the consciousness design, what animates through it all is awareness, with the imperative to recognize the ears it is a part of, through the comparison that everything creational affords, as I said. In reality, then, it is this overall isness reality playing simulated games with itself, as it animates through all consciousness-effected form and feature. But from the perspective of the personal disconnected self, until the real awareness is re-established and recognized, it's as though the creations have taken on a life of their own, like a child playing war games with two opposing armies of toy soldiers, and where the soldiers think they are real. I have shared on previous real-side experiences that on occasion I will be shown my operating in a protective capacity, especially with those who are just beginning their awareness processes. For indeed, such a process involves a facing and releasing of every idea agreement and attachment the consciousness comprises of, that until this is taken on, we remain the unconscious effect of the entirety of the consciousness, and where we have agreements as extended to others, according to the parameters of the agreement specifics, so can these individuals always encroach into our experiences potentially, and operate to the extent that the agreement pertaining to them allows. For as I hold to the idea that is the consciousness-effected body form of another, so always the effect of them is as a constant feature in my experience. We hold the door permanently open to them. And should we, as an example, have an agreement with another individual which expresses as a dynamic where they can abuse or harm us, as nothing can we experience unless we have the idea's consciousness installed, including the ability of others to exact harm upon us or even destroy us, With such an agreement in place, we potentially at any time can be abused by the individual, regardless of our being conscious of the agreement or not, as the bulk of the agreements we have secured and amassed since first entering the simulator will be subconsciously placed, but despite our being unconscious of them, we still are their effects. As it is agreement throughout all consciousness that props up and maintains the dark forces' positions of simulator control and domination, they of course will be opposed to any individual going about a process where these agreements are faced and released. Agreements which will include those which maintain the dark forces' control. Practically all consciousness then will be a construct overwhelmingly of acquiescence to the power of the controllers, an idea then that will express as the controller's ability to exercise this power permission that they can torture, abuse, and destroy, and as beings begin an awareness process of consciousness idea releasing, the dark forces will be swift to take advantage of the agreements still extended to them, those which allow them to abuse, torture, and destroy, before these agreements are revoked, and the dark forces then rendered unable to impose upon the individual abrasively. For if I hold to no idea agreements, I cannot be the effect of anything, and I can operate in creation beyond the ability of others to bestow harm upon my created form. And so expected will it be for the newly stepping up individual to be attacked with this agreement window of opportunity the dark forces have in which to do so, in an effort to at least discourage them, if not outright destroy them, should they remain steadfast in their resolve, for their real intent of is recognition. The dark forces always can only operate within the parameters as set by the individual they wish to target, as we each are the deciders of our experience, and including the participatory roles others can play within them. And this holds true for the new friends who are assigned the position as protectors of the newly stepping up individual, that we can only assist to the extent that the individual allows. We and the dark forces can only step into the roles and within the strict parameters as set by the individual. In reality then, the individual is deciding to experience being attacked, that the dark forces can then eagerly assume the roles of, and additionally, the individual decides to be extracted, rescued, or assisted from the plight they had created for themselves, and the new friends can then step into these assigned positions. For indeed, the individual may intend to release all agreements, but a process that takes the moments it will, and so it makes sense to assist individuals where we are able. Agreements extended to the dark forces that facilitate their abilities to harm them, that although agreements they will release at some stage, but in the meantime, so we can present as interventions into situations where an awareness process barely begun can be disrupted or derailed. Again, the extent of our intervention, according to the agreement layout of the individual we are attempting to assist. In this real side experience, a newly stepping up individual would take the form of a female reptilian, that she, like all in the simulator, will have agreements extended to the dark forces' power over them, or if operating within the dark force control systems, as she had been prior to her intent now to step up, as one becomes embroiled with the dark forces, so one takes on a certain agreement contracts also, just like the mafia, where all who become members agree that their life is a forfeit should they elect to walk away, as an example, and with the consciousness of agreements still to be overwhelmingly released therefore, she would be vulnerable to dark force attack, and so I would take on the position of her protector during this initial and most dangerous stage of her awareness process. I would be walking through a black void at first. I would construe this as representing the relative unconsciousness of the female reptilian, a process of awareness just commencing, as I said. Looming before me now would be a forbidding-looking metallic sealed gateway, and stationed beside it would be a very tall body form, dressed in black robes, and presenting as though the guardian to this gate. Impressions revealed I was to accompany the reptilian female through the preliminary stages of her awareness process until she found her feet, as it were, until she became more capable through the releasing of enough agreements that rendered her less vulnerable to the effects of others imposing adversely on her experience. Very often, going through the process of awareness, of facing the personal self-consciousness, can be represented by traversing through vast structures, buildings, towers or castles, that which houses the entirety of the consciousness, and where the agreements we release will express as these ideas, becoming as obstacles we must overcome. In regards to the ideas that are other individuals, as we confront the ideas of them, generally they will express their disdain at being severed, and especially with the dark forces that, as I said, the agreements pertaining to them not only allow them to operate in our experiences, but to operate in controlling ways, control they are loath to give up. This gateway, then, was the entrance to the consciousness of this female reptilian, and all she would be experiencing within would be part of her process of facing and releasing the created self, that although we could say these were just simulated expressions of the awareness process, the expected attacks would be very real, that for her would span the months and years of real-side experiences she would have to endure as she went about it. The tall, imposing guardian at the gate was the Kalom god, as impressions suggested. For all who begin their awareness processes, ultimately the agreements they are releasing prop up a reptilian control system of which the Kalom sits at the pinnacle, that very often will the newly stepping up individuals have a confrontation with the Kalom, or at least he will make himself known. I myself had a number of real side experiences when I first began my process of awareness, where although he didn't actually attack me, as he generally doesn't desire to take on the karmic backlash for doing so, the Kalom would present his intimidating presence in several instances. My first ever singing of the New You would result in him materializing briefly in my physical level room, and here, in this experience, he couldn't prevent the reptilian female from her choice to become more aware. He only could stand menacingly at the gate to her consciousness. For indeed, as the consciousness design overall maintains and is the simulator, according overwhelmingly to the Kalom's desires, he really is the consciousness controller, he is the gatekeeper in a sense, but as I said, we each have the key by which we can assume positions aside from the effects of the Calorm consciousness, that of the real awareness true reality of ourselves. With all that being said, he would glare down at me, place one mighty hand on the gates, and swing them open that my entry be afforded. As I said, he could not prevent the stepping up Reptilian's awareness process from being so, and unlike his more foolish, lesser Reptilian minions, he won't take on the karmic repercussions for interjecting, although he could easily have done so, as all agreement to the dark force's power is ultimately agreement to the Calorm. I would enter the gates, the Cal glaring at me as I walked by him, and effectively into the consciousness of the Reptilian female. I would shortly be in her presence, your typical Reptilian body type, tailed, scaled, and possessing of a lizard-like face, but she had a positively cheery personality, and a delight to be in the company of, and an honour to assist. As I said, for every agreement she now would release, for the agreements that pertained to the more ill-intended and abrasively inclined, so would they be guaranteed to attack her while the agreement was maintained prior to its release. For although they may well attempt to attack her at a later moment, but with the agreement allowing their success severed, that they would then fail in their effort, so their best chance was to assail her before she released the agreement, facilitating their ability to harm or destroy her. And this is where I came in. For we can take on the karma of others. From the simulated perspective, we can take hits on their behalf, just like transferring a file from their computer to ours, from their consciousness to our own, and experiencing the effect on their behalf, and where we are better able to deal with it, that although we experience the effect, the idea of the attacking individual, as we lack the additional agreement that they can actually harm us, so the idea is nullified, in that it is reflected, expressing as the individual bearing the immediate brunt of their own abrasiveness, and expressed in whatever simulated way it might. And this would be the theme of this experience, as the Reptilian would be assailed by all manner of monstrous body types and beings, all the ill-intended characters she had agreement with, expressing their disdain at her releasing the ideas that pertained to them. I would intervene on her behalf, taking her hits, taking the effects she was set to experience, and nullifying the attacking efforts of the various assorted, twisted, ill-intended forms. At one point, we would be walking past a gathering, a group of assorted alien body types, and they would be involved in a ceremony of a kind. Impressions revealed that these individuals were representatives of the various religions this female Reptilian had indulged in throughout her many lifetimes and body types. For the idea of a religion is a standard controlling mechanism that, just like practically everything, every idea in the simulator at this time is a creation of the Reptilians, or has been infected by it, and therefore is another means by which agreement to the dark forces is secured and maintained, all leading to the door of the Calorm, as he in fact will be every god and every devil as worshipped and feared through all religions throughout multi-dimensional creation. The circle of beings absorbed in what was overall a religious ceremony, as though an amalgamation of all religions the Reptilian female had ever been in association with, would expand, the circle the individuals formed becoming larger, and as though trying to encompass the reptilian, as though the idea held a degree of allure that she could readily have been drawn back into the idea and limited accordingly. Some emotional attached to ideas will take longer to release than others. Religions that have been ingrained and agreed upon for lifetimes can be among the more difficult to release, but nevertheless she stood firm in her intent to do so, and would back away from the growing in size circle that the individuals had formed, expressing her determination to let all ideas pertaining to all religions go that she had ever been involved with. As I said, when we release ideas, especially where other ill-intended beings are involved, we will generally be met with antagonism, and given that all religions are the creations of the dark forces, and releasing agreement to religions is a lessening of the overall agreement extended to the dark forces, so huge lumbering alligators would emerge from the circle of drone-like, oblivious, unconscious religious worshippers, quite clearly representing the dark force reptilian disdain at the stepping up reptilian's choice to relinquish all agreement pertaining to religions. The huge alligators were intending to attack the female reptilian, and just like the previous twisted and assorted body types, they would have been successful in harming or eliminating her through agreements she was in the process of releasing but hadn't as yet done so, but for my intervention, as I took the effects on myself, and stepped between the huge alligators and the female reptilian. I would receive a number of crushing bites all over my body, and the pain was quite tangible, but as I said, I lacked agreements where they could harm me, and so despite a little pain, their efforts were ultimately nullified. The female reptilian was proceeding admirably with her process of awareness, facing her consciousness and swiftly releasing the agreements with little issue, trepidation, or regret. As I continued to take on all effects she was unable to deal with at the moment of her facing of the agreements, the subsequent attacks she was receiving, but in the aftermath of the agreements being released, she now would be in a position to be able to handle the body types she previously had been unable, should they elect to attempt to attack her again. There was one area of her consciousness expressed arena which comprised of very large body types, whose appearances could not be described with the references my personal self has available. Impressions revealed that these were mighty, godlike beings of some kind, and that which allows a being to be in a position of power where they may be considered as gods is through the vast agreement required that allows this to be, and these particular so-called gods would be those in association very likely with all the religions the reptilian female had been involved with throughout all her lifetimes, and as many of her lifetimes were with all manner of far-flung alien species and civilizations, each with their own unique and very different social consciousnesses, social orders, religions, spiritual ideas, etc., etc. So these god characters were as indescribable in relation to the human experience as the worlds and body forms she had had previous lifetimes as. She surely had been around the creational block, so to say, that although she was able to relinquish agreements with ease as she had proceeded, Seems the agreements and emotional attachments with these godlike beings would take a few more moments for her to be able to let go of. As such, we would walk tentatively around the area they were in, as to anger her gods, coupled with her reluctance to release attachment to them, so she would retain the agreement ability of them to be able to destroy her, as most religions will ingrain the acceptance that the gods are all powerful and can smite us if they so choose, etc., and additionally would I be unable to intercede on her behalf, as she also would not extend the agreement ability that enabled that I could. For the process of awareness will take the moments it will, some agreements and attachments more easily released than others, but ultimately, if the reptilian female intended to stand fully as the being of real awareness light she actually is, in recognition of the all is, and extricated from the necessity of the simulators, then she can hold to no idea that binds her to its effects, for even a single idea will have us positioned in creation, the only place where the ideas we cling to are experienced in isolation of the everything isness wholeness, the true reality aside from all created ideas. And there the experience would end. As I said, another former Dark Force reptilian stepping up and embarking on her process of his recognition, and she would be proceeding admirably, though with a few ideas that would take the time required for her to see the sense in finally releasing, but a testament to how, regardless of her choices, of how abrasive and destructive of others we may have been for lifetimes, always there is the opportunity of the ears as the real awareness decides, and the personal self is brought into the picture and aligns its intent with the real intent of his recognition, that despite the reptilians being the established simulator villains, this female reptilian was just one of multitudes of reptilians stepping up at this moment, a reminder that regardless of the consciousness and the affected body types, this is the underlying imperative of the real awareness animating through it all, that of his recognition.